Well, hello, welcome back. Today we'll discuss a couple more things you can do with C# parameters. So I have this method here called calculate bonus, and I've set default values into the parameters. So default values allow the caller to optionally specify those parameters. So in this case, the caller could specify just the base salary and none of these other parameters, which will all default to false. Sales bonus, retention bonus, and just because bonus. So in that case, of course, the bonus will be calculated to 0. So that looks like this over here. Calculate bonus. Here, my first call specifies all 3 parameters. And here, this call, they all default to false. So this call will result in the same result because all these parameters will default to false. You just don't have to specify them. And they're still positional. So here I specify one of the default parameters and change its value to true. Let's look at this in the debugger. I'll start running it and trace into this. And we can see these get their default values, but they were specified by the caller. They're all still false. Step out of. And then trace into. Same result. The parameters get their default values, also resulting in a 0 bonus. And then calculate bonus here, I have one parameter I specified, and it's still positional, so it's the very first Boolean parameter that'll be specified there, and that's the sales bonus. So sales bonus is true, but the other two parameters are false. So you can see we've calculated a bonus of $4,000, 10%, that's the sales bonus. Okay. So once you, default parameters are optional, they're still positional. So down in here, just make sure that you know that once you set a default value, all the other parameters to the right get a default value. So because I specified the sales bonus to be false here, the compiler will insist that all the parameters following that, to the right of that, will be specified, but the base salary here starts out not specified. That means the caller always has to specify the base salary, but none of these 3 others. Let's go on to named parameters. So named parameters allow you to give the parameters a name. It's especially useful if you have a series of parameters, all of the same data type, all integers, or a lot of times a method will take a set of flags like this one does. 3 flags, you can say, well, what does this mean? Not self-documenting code. Whereas this, self-documenting code. Sales bonus false, retention bonus true, just because bonus false. Trace into this. And we can see that we've successfully passed those parameters, retention bonus true and false. Okay, named parameters, very useful. Again, when you have 3 parameters or several parameters, all of the same data type, it helps to document that code, especially flags like this. Named parameters do not depend on order. So once you start naming parameters, you can list them in any order you please. Like default parameters, once you start naming parameters, you've got to name every other parameter to the right of that. So my first parameter here is not named. That's the base salary. Once I start naming a parameter, then everything else has to be named. And they don't depend on order. So I have this other method here called named bonus. And in that case, I'm giving named parameters here. Last name Smith, base salary 70,000. And named, just to illustrate that named parameters do not depend on default values. They're 2 separate concepts. I just wanted to be clear with that. But they can work together. So here we have a name bonus. As we know, last names that begin with S are the best. So those employees get a bonus of 15%. Base salary. And that concludes our discussion of default parameters that become optional by the caller and named parameters which can help document your code. And solve potential bugs in the case that you have parameters that are inadvertently swapped. Being the same data type, the compiler can't catch that type of error.